me, that's frustrating because I agree with you completely. But also it like gives a lot of um, justification for that settlers crowd that like the leftist organizing can't actually happen here in the imperial core. Um,
You know,
so
it's almost like they watched the movie Easy Rider a bit too much, right? You know, you ever see the movie Easy Rider, right? 1969, classic movie. Two hippies are you know, on their motorcycle driving across middle America, you know, smuggling cocaine. And at first they go to this hippie commune, and the people there are nice hippies, and they're just like living in peace and sharing everything. But as they're driving through middle America, everywhere they go, they meet these racist rednecks that are just threatening them, and you know, and stuff. And finally, they, I think, towards spoiler alert, they get killed by a group of rednecks at the end of the movie, and it's this like really depressing movie from 1969. And Jack Nicholson is in it, and I can't remember the other actors. It's a classic film, but it's a very pessimistic movie that presents the United States as a country with a lot of kind of like rich kids who want peace and are kind of stoics and want to live in communes and be hippies. And most of middle America are dangerous, evil rednecks who are just full of hate and violence and want to kill you. And it's a very dark film. There's a big long LSD trip that goes on for 5 or 10 minutes with, you know, just like colors on the screen. It's, you know, it's a very strange movie from 1969, but it's a very dark, pessimistic movie. Usually we associate the 1960s and the New Left with like some kind of optimism. But if you watch that film, which was like the hippie movie, I think Jimi Hendrix wrote a song just for the movie. And it's a very dark movie, and that kind of captures the essence of how the New Left sees the United States. And
Yeah,
that's the Settlers movie, basically. So.
yeah.
and that's a perfect segue into our next question, because I think this is what if anyone's been watching the news at all for the past month, you know, we constantly see depictions of Trump supporters as that, especially the folks that stormed the Capitol. You made a very moving video recently, and I think we should definitely highlight that. And anyone that's watching this that hasn't seen it, your call to reaching out to Trump supporters, everyone should really watch that. It's a very moving video.
Thanks.
And so in your video, you call for people getting out to Trump supporters and win them and trying to win them over with Marxism. Talk about how important this is, given that so many people on the left have an aversion to talking to anyone with backward ideas.
Well, you know, the kind of people who could become radical right-wingers, and that's what these QAnon folks who stormed the Capitol were. They were radical right-wingers. I think the Trumpers now claim it was all an Antifa conspiracy, but I think they're
Yeah.
wrong about that. I think, you know, I mean, the kind of people that can become radical right-wingers are the kind of people that can become radical left-wingers. You know, they don't have peace with the system. They're looking for answers. They're angry at the status quo, and that's the kind of person that could become a revolutionary. Unfortunately, if there's no ideology there to win them over, but there is right-wing ideology everywhere, it'll be right-wing ideology that captures their attention. This is pretty basic stuff. And if you understand the way radical politics generally works, I mean, this has been long understood. I actually found a Lenin speech where he talked about how during the Russian Revolution and during the German Revolution of 1919 and elsewhere, people would go from the Black Hundreds Party to the Communist Party in a week, right? The Black Hundreds Party was this mass anti-Semitic fascist party in Russia, but people would just flip and go over to the Communist Party, and that happened a lot. And in Weimar Germany, you know, when in the lead up to Hitler coming into power, the way the political alignment was you had the Social Democratic Party, which was the party of like labor unions, and it was like the left-wing party of people who were employed and factory workers. You had the Christian Democratic Party, which was the right-wing party for people that were employed. And then among the desperately poor and unemployed, you had the Communist Party and you had the Nazi Party. And they recruited out of the same neighborhoods, and they appealed to the same kind of sentiments, people that were angry and wanted things to change. You know, and the Nazis had a very different message and a very different ideology and perspective, but they were recruiting people that didn't have peace with the system and were ready to fight. So whenever in society you see people that don't have peace with the system and they're ready to fight, you need to go to them and win them, win them to Marxism. The Communist Manifesto says that communists support every uprising against the existing order of things, but in all of them, they raise the primary question, which is the property question. Every uprising against the existing order of things, not just the pure uprisings against the existing order of things, not just the ones that are politically correct. No, they support every uprising against the existing order of things. But, and that is important, but they raise in all of them the property question, meaning that if workers are revolting against paying their taxes, right, and having big protests around the country against the tax system, you go to them and say, we support you. The tax system is rigged against working families. However, the issue is the property question. The issue is who controls the means of production. The issue is capitalism. So, and we see communists, they tend to do half. They do half, and they do half of this whenever there's an uprising. Whenever there's a right-wing uprising, they don't support it. Even if the issue is something that leftists would talk about, like the tax code being rigged, like, whatever, right? Wars, isolation, if there's a right-wing uprising, they don't support it, right? And if there's a left-wing uprising, they support it, but they don't raise the property question. They just blindly support it. Whatever the leftists, whenever there's some kind of left-wing uprising, Occupy Wall Street or Black, they just applaud for it and they don't raise the property question. Well, the Communist Manifesto says, every uprising against the existing order of things, but always bring forth the property question. So do both. If there's ever an uprising against the existing order of things, support it, but always raise the property question. That's a good guide for how communists should approach things. And whenever people are not at peace with the system, and whenever people are angry, especially if they're angry enough to do something like what those folks did on Capitol Hill, a communist should be able to talk to those people. It doesn't mean you should support what they did. I don't think what they did was right. I mean, it's clearly uncalled for, and their beliefs are completely wrong. And, I'm not a supporter of what went on, but I do support working people who are angry. And I do want to get to those people with the property question. So that's how I would address it. And that's how Karl Marx would address it. And that's how Lenin would address it. I feel like this is the Marxist approach to people that are not at peace with the system.